Welcome to another lesson from the Spring Hill Church of Christ, meeting at 405 Butler Street, Spring Hill, Louisiana. I'm Mike Hughes, your class teacher for this class from 1 Samuel chapter 4 through chapter 7. That is our study in the book of 1 Samuel. The book of 1 Samuel records Israel's history from the birth of the prophet Samuel up through David's trials before he became king. It ends with the death of King Saul, which opens the door for David's ascent to the throne. The biography of Samuel's story of David and Goliath and the biography of King Saul are included. We continue in the first section, the birth and life of Samuel, the final judge. Now, 1 Samuel took place during the times of judges, as did Ruth. There was no king in Israel, and the people did what was right in their own eyes. It was a time of evil, as we pointed out many times. Rejecting God, idolatry, no one person leading the nation. Prior to that time, there had been leaders of the whole nation of Israel, Moses and Joshua. The Lord raised them up as leaders of his people, and under their leadership, Israel left the bondage of Egypt, conquered the enemies of the land of Canaan, and after Joshua's death, Israel turned away from the Lord. Judges chapter 2, verse 11 through 19. Go back and study that, and you'll see that. They did not completely drive out the Canaanites from the land. Israel began to follow the gods of the Canaanites, and when they did, the Lord sold them to their enemies until they cried to him for deliverance. Then he raised up a judge to deliver his people, Israel, and he was the judge, but the people didn't really listen to the judge. And when the judge that God would raise up died, then the cycle would begin again and again. Eli was one of those judges who was a judge for 40 years. He lived at the same time as some of the other judges according to the chart in our lesson. Jephthah and Samson being two of them. Samson was the judge who began to deliver Israel from the Philistines, Judges 13:5. And in 1 Samuel chapter 8, it is recorded that the people of Israel asked for a king to deliver them from their enemies. Samuel had appointed his sons as judges, but they weren't honest, perverted justice by taking bribes. The people didn't want them to be judges, and you'll notice we'll be studying all of that next week. But you'll notice these two arcs. One of these arcs shows us the life of Saul and how it ends in the book of 1 Samuel. Then we have David's life beginning in 1 Samuel there in the bottom around chapter 8, going all the way to the end of 2 Samuel. So that's what we see in this chart, and we've already talked about the recap, and we've talked about the characters in our study, Samuel, Saul, and David, and we will see transfers of leadership from Samuel to Saul and then from Saul to David, how it goes. And so that is our chart as we're beginning our study in today's lesson, 1 Samuel chapter 4. It's where we will be studying. Here is a look at 1 Samuel at a glance, and where we are beginning today, 1 Samuel chapter 4, verse 1, the judgeship of Samuel. The first transition of leadership is what we will see in this chart. Once again, showing us an up-close view of Saul, his successes, what we're going to see, his failures, David's successes, all the way to the conclusion of his life. And we see the Song of David in 2 Samuel chapter 21 through 24. So with that, let's notice the judgeship of Eli and Samuel. We'll be looking at this chart quite often, and here's some legend to go along with the numbers you're seeing, and we will be referring to this chart various times in our lesson today. So part 1 is 1 Samuel chapter 1 through 1 Samuel chapter 7, verse 17. The judgeship of Samuel we'll be talking about today, the need for Samuel's leadership, and as we began this lesson, during Samuel's pursuit of the Philistines, the Israelites, they camped at Ebenezer while the Philistines camped at Aphek, and there they are pictured on the map on the left side. The Philistines will overtake the Israelites, killing about 4,000 of them. There's Aphek, and there's Ebenezer, the location. And so we began in the first part, the ark is lost, chapter 4, verse 1 through 11. First of all, the dangers of superstition, verses 1 through 4. The word of the Lord, the word of Samuel came to all of Israel. Now, Israel went out to battle against the Philistines. They encamped at Ebenezer, and the Philistines encamped at Aphek. We've already shown that on that map, and here it is on this map, number 3 and 4. If you'll look at 3 and 4, there is the encampments. Israel is going to be defeated by the Philistines, we're going to see in this map. The Philistines drew up in line against Israel. When the battle spread, Israel was defeated before the Philistines, who killed about 4,000 men on the battlefield. And when the people came to the camp, the elders of Israel said, "Why has the Lord defeated us today before the Philistines? Let us bring the ark of the covenant of the Lord here from Shiloh, that it may come among us and save us from the power of our enemies." Like a good luck charm. So they thought they would use it kind of as a superstitious piece, what they had. So again, we're getting an idea of where these places are. There's Shiloh, number 2 on this map. And of course, they want to bring it to Aphek and Ebenezer, the area of the battle. Verse 4, so the people went to Shiloh, brought from there the ark of the covenant of the Lord of hosts, who is enthroned on the cherubim. And the 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were there with the ark of the covenant of God. So now we learn another lesson they're going to learn is that God can't be controlled by our actions. Notice, if you will, verse 5. As soon as the ark of the covenant of the Lord came into the camp, all Israel gave a mighty shout so that the earth resounded. Again, our location, where we're talking about. When the Philistines heard the noise of shouting, they said, "What does this great shouting in the camp of the Hebrews mean?" And when they learned that the ark of the Lord had come to the camp, the Philistines were afraid, for they said, "A god," lowercase notice, "has come into the camp." And they said, "Woe to us, for nothing like this has happened before. Woe to us! Who can deliver us from the power of these mighty gods?" Said, these are the gods who struck the Egyptians with every sort of plague in the wilderness. Take courage and be men, O Philistines, lest you become slaves to the Hebrews as they have been to you. He says, be men and fight. That's what he tells them in this passage of Scripture. So the Philistines fought, and Israel was defeated, and they fled every man to his home, and there was a great slaughter, for 30,000 foot soldiers of Israel fell. And the ark of God was captured, and the 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, died. And so now Eli's inglorious end. How is Eli going to die? We know Eli's going to die. That's been shown to us. All men will die eventually. The scene changes sharply back to Shiloh. A man of Benjamin comes to Shiloh. Eli is sitting along the road as he waits. The desolate cry goes up in the town. A difference in sound and triumph. And Eli is desperate for news. Let's look at this. And so the death of Eli's daughter-in-law is also going to come here. So verse 12, a man of Benjamin ran from the battle line, came to Shiloh the same day with his clothes torn and with dirt on his hand. Kind of an object story, you might say. And when he arrived, Eli was sitting on his seat by the road watching, for his heart trembled for the Ark of the Covenant. He was concerned about the Ark of the Covenant being captured, as well as he should be. And when the man came into the city and told the news, all the city cried out. When Eli heard the sounds of the outcry, he said, "What is the uproar?" Then the man hurried, came and told Eli. Eli was 98 years old. His eyes were set so that he could not see. Perhaps he had cataracts or something like that that clouded his vision. He couldn't see. The man said to Eli, "I am he who has come from the battle. I fled from the battle today." And he said, "How did it go, my son?" And he brought the news and answered and said, "Israel has fled before the Philistines, and there has also been a great defeat among the people," he says, "and your two sons also, Hophni and Phinehas, are dead, and the ark of God has been captured." Now notice verse 18. As soon as he mentioned the ark of God, Eli fell over backwards from his seat by the side of the gate, and his neck was broken, and he died, for the man was old and heavy. And notice this, he had judged Israel 40 years. Wonder what kind of state funeral they would have had for Eli. So once again, here is our map to show the areas here where we're talking about. Aphix, number 3, and Ebenezer, number 4. The area is where we're about to see the ark is going to be moved to Ashdod, and we'll notice number 5 is where Ashdod is, there below Ekron on the map. So with the capturing the ark, the Philistines felt they had captured Israel's God was almost certainly shared by many Israelites. If God had indeed gone there, there was no hope. God had not been captured, but life for Israel did change. Eli's family is no longer going to be in charge of things. Now, notice, if you will, verse 19. His daughter-in-law, the wife of Phinehas, was pregnant, about to give birth, and when she heard the news that the ark was captured and that her father-in-law and her husband were dead, she bowed and gave birth. And what's it say? Her pains came upon her. And about the time of her death, the woman attending her said to her, "Do not be afraid, for you have borne a son." But she did not answer or pay attention. Why? Because she was dead. The news was too much for her to bear in that time. So this nurse called the child Ichabod, saying, "The glory has departed from Israel." That's what that name means. Because the ark of God had been captured, and because her father-in-law and her husband, of course, they had died. And she said, "The glory departed from Israel, for the ark of God has been captured." So we see with another lesson is that God must be seen to be God by believers and unbelievers alike, not just some foreign God, like a false God. He must be seen as the true God. We'll see that in chapter 5 and in verse 1 as we look at this map and see where the ark is going to wind up. So when the Philistines captured the ark of God, they brought it to Ebenezer, from Ebenezer to Ashdod. Verse 2, then the Philistines took the ark of God and brought it into the house of Dagon, that's their god, and set it up beside Dagon. Now, if you want to see Dagon, all you have to do now today, go to Chicago to the Oriental Institute, and they have one of Dagon's idols on display, complete with moving mouth, that they would have made his mouth move, and the whole thing right there can be seen in the Oriental Institute. Here is a picture of kind of the way they depicted him. Of course, he doesn't look this way in this idol, but this is the way that he's depicted as the drawings you see from that time period. So when the people of Ashdod rose up early the next day, behold, Dagon had fallen face down on the ground before the ark of the Lord. So they took Dagon and put him back in his place. But they rose early on the next morning. Dagon had fallen face down on the ground before the ark of the Lord, and the head of Dagon and both his hands were lying cut off at the threshold. Only the trunk of Dagon was left to him. So here it is depicted for you. Revere Yahweh or die is what it says in the top there. Lessons learned when the Philistines stole the ark. In other words, don't mess with God's box, is what you could say. 1 Samuel 4 through 7 that we're studying now. So this is why it says, the priest of Dagon and all who enter the house of Dagon do not tread on the threshold of Dagon in Ashdod to this day. That's what we have. So the ark is in the hands of the Philistines, and we do not know exactly, we're going to see in 5:1 these emerods were, but we do know they were a very destructive. So here we have the ark in the hands of the Philistines. The house of Dagon was one of the gods of the Philistines, and since Philistines believed that Dagon had given them victory over Israel, the ark was brought into Dagon's temple and deposited at his feet as a war trophy. So Ashdod was plagued with emerods. Josephus indicates that it was a very destructive disease involving bleeding, severe vomiting involved, but we don't know exactly what this disease was. And again, here is the location of Ashdod from Aphex. So verse 6, the hand of the Lord was heavy against the people of Ashdod, and he terrified and afflicted them with tumors, there's those emerods, both Ashdod and its territory. When the men of Ashdod saw how things were, they said, the ark of the God of Israel must not remain with us, for his hand is hard against us and against Dagon our God. So they sent and gathered together all the lords of the Philistines and said, what shall we do with the ark of the God of Israel? And they answered, let the ark of the God of Israel be brought around to Gath. And so they brought the ark of the God of Israel there. And the ark of the God, we see, was captured. And so Gath is number 6 on your map, where we see Gath right there below Ashdod. So we see it's kind of making its way away from Dagon, so they're trying to get away from Dagon where it won't affect Dagon anymore. After they brought it around, the hand of the Lord was against the city, causing a very great panic. He afflicted the men of the city, both young and old, so that tumors broke out on them. So they sent the ark of God to Ekron. But as soon as the ark of God came to Ekron, the people of Ekron cried out, they have brought around to us the ark of the God of Israel to kill us and our people. Now again, location of Ekron, as you see on the map, number 7 is where we are with this. So there's another way we can see where this is located. So there's sometimes much to learn from unbelievers. And that's what we see with this story. Now there's a map of the Philistine area. We see Gaza, we see Ashkelon, and places along the Mediterranean River there. And so verse 11 of chapter 5, they sent therefore, gathered together all the lords of the Philistines, and said, send away the ark of God of Israel, and let it return to its own place, that it may not kill us and our people. For there was a deathly panic throughout the whole city, and the hand of God was very heavy there. The men who did not die were struck with tumors, and the cry of the city went up to heaven. Chapter 6, verse 1. The ark of the Lord was in the country of the Philistines 7 months, wreaking havoc. And they said in verse 3, if you send away the ark of God of Israel, do not send it empty, but by all means return him a guilt offering. Then you will be healed, and it will be known to you why his hand does not turn away from you. And so there we saw the location. They said, what is the guilt offering that we shall return to him? And they answered, 5 golden tumors. 5 golden mice, according to the number of the lords of the Philistines, for the same plague was on all of you and on your lords. So the returning of the ark. And we see as we look at this, the priests of the Philistines instructed that a new cart should be constructed to carry the ark, and they said it should be drawn by 2 milk cows, which had never been under a yoke. So they made 5 golden emerods or tumors and 5 golden mice, according to the number of the lords of the Philistines. So this was a trespass offering. They sent 2 milk cows, taking away their calves on their way without any guidance, and the cows, watched by the Philistines, made their way back to Beth-Shemesh into the field of Joshua. You kind of see the cart there depicting that idea for us. And once again, here is the trip it makes. So Beth-Shemesh, and then it's going to wind up at Kirjath Jearim. So there we'll see where this ark will wind up. So chapter 6, verse 5, so you must take images of the tumors and images of your mice that ravage the land, and give glory to the God of Israel. Perhaps he will lighten his hand from off of you and your gods and your land. Why should you harden your hearts as the Egyptians and Pharaoh hardened their? So see, they knew the story of them coming out of Egypt. After he had dealt severely with them, did they not send the people away, and they departed? Now then, take and prepare a new cart, 2 milk cows. So here's this preparation we were just talking about, what's going to happen. Take the ark, place it on the cart. Now, of course, that's not the way the ark is supposed to be carried. We saw that. Put in a box at its side the figures of gold which you are returning to him as a guilt offering. Then send it off and let it go on its way. And so they watched it, we see, to Beth-Shemesh. Then they said, it has done us this great harm, but if not, then we shall know that it is not his hand that struck us. It happened to us by coincidence. So that's the idea. If they're relieved. And so they put the ark on the cart, the box with the golden mice and the images of their tumor. And so the cows went straight. You know, it's surprising the cows go straight, because they're you'd think they'd long for their calves, but we see God in this. They turned neither right to the left or the right, we find. The lords of the Philistines went after them as far as the border of Beth-Shemesh. So they watched them. So the ark is regained. And so our God is an awesome God, we see from these verses. So now the people of Beth-Shemesh were reaping their wheat in the valley, and when they lifted up their eyes, they saw the ark of God and rejoiced to see it. And so once again, we see the location of where we are now, number 9. Kerith Jearim, the ark will remain there 20 years, is what we will learn. So the ark came into the field of Joshua, stopped there. It's going to be there 20 years. Great stone was there, and they split up the wood of the cart, offered the cows as a burnt offering to the Lord. So it was captured, had been captured. Verse 15, the Levites took down the ark of the Lord because they knew how to handle it with the rods of staves, in which were the golden figures. They took the box, they set them upon the great stone, and the men of Beth-Shemesh offered burnt offerings and sacrifices on that day to the Lord. And when the 5 lords of the Philistines saw it, they returned that day to Ekron. And so these are the golden tumors. The Philistines returned as a guilt offering to the Lord, one for Ashdod, one for Gaza, one for Ashkelon, one for Gath, and one for Ekron. The places that they had took that Ark of the Covenant that God had afflicted. What we see. The golden mice, according to the numbers of the cities of the Philistines belonging to the 5 lords, both fortified cities and unwalled cities. So there's the symbolism. He struck them, some of the men of Beth-Shemesh, because they looked upon the ark of the Lord. They weren't to look inside. He struck 70 men of them, and the people mourned because the Lord had struck the people with a great blow. The men of Beth-Shemesh said, who is able to stand before the Lord, this holy God, and to whom shall he go up away from us? So just like the Philistines, their reaction to the tragedy was to move the ark on so that it might become someone else's problem. It seems the Philistines had learned more from the event than the Israelite inhabitants of Beth-Shemesh, what it shows me. Verse 21, so they sent messengers to the inhabitants of Kerith Jearim, saying, the Philistines have returned the ark of the Lord. Come down and take it up to you. So they're going to take it. There we see Kerith Jearim, number 9, is where the ark is about to go. Chapter 7, the men of Kerith Jearim came and took up the ark of the Lord, brought it to the house of Abinadab on a hill, and they consecrated his son Eleazar to have charge of the ark of the Lord. And from the day that the ark was lodged at Kerith Jearim, a long time passed, some 20 years, and all the house of Israel lamented after the Lord. Chapter 7. Now Samuel comes back into the picture. Now presented as a mature, influential adult, he has noted the resurgence in religious commitment, but is aware of the problems of the people. Now, we learn every year, we're going to learn of Samuel's travels to Bethel, Gilgal, Mizpah, as a judge of Israel. He makes a circuit, much like the old circuit preachers used to do. So once Israel had signified the reality of the commitment to the Lord by getting rid of all the Baals and the Asherahs, then it was possible for Samuel to lead them in ceremony of repentance, reaffirmation, confession, they're reaffirming, recommitment to their allegiance to God. And Samuel said to all the house of Israel, if you are returning to the Lord with all your heart, then put away the foreign gods and the Asherah from among you, and direct your heart to the Lord and serve him only, and he will deliver you out of the hands of the Philistines. So the people of Israel put away the Baals and the Asherah, and they served the Lord only. Samuel said, gather all of Israel at Mizpah, and I will pray to the Lord for you. So they gathered them at Mizpah, drew the water, poured it out before the Lord, fasted on that day, and said, we have sinned against the Lord. And Samuel judged the people of Israel at Mizpah. And so when the Philistines heard the people of Israel had gathered at Mizpah, the Lord of the Philistines went up against Israel. And when the people of Israel heard it, they were afraid of the Philistines. So now we see where Mizpah is. Number 10 is where we are now. And the people of Israel said to Samuel, do not cease to cry out to the Lord our God for us, that he may save us from the hand of the Philistines. So Samuel took a nursing lamb, offered it as a whole burnt offering to the Lord, and Samuel cried out to the Lord for Israel, and the Lord answered him. And as Samuel was offering up the burnt offering, the Philistines drew near to attack, but the Lord thundered with a mighty sound that day against the Philistines and threw them into confusion, threshold, and they were defeated before Israel. The men of Israel went out from Mizpah, pursued the Philistines, struck them as far as Beth-Kah. And then Samuel took a stone, set it up between Mizpah and Shin, called its name Ebenezer, for he said, until now the Lord has helped us. That song, Here I Raise My Ebenezer, means that the Lord is a stone of help. He is solid help for us in the time of need. And so there's what we have: Bethel, Gilgal, Mizpah, his circuit that he traveled is what we see on that map. So now the ongoing service in relative peace as well as Christ, as in crisis, 13 through 17. The Philistines were subdued and did not again enter the territory of Israel, and the hand of the Lord was against the Philistine all the days of Samuel. The cities of the Philistines that they had taken from Israel were restored to Israel, from Ekron to Gath, and Israel delivered their territory from the hand of the Philistines, and there was peace also between Israel and the Amorites. Samuel judged Israel all the days of his life, and he went on a circuit year by year. We've already seen his circuit, and he judged Israel in all these places. Then he would return to Ramah, for his home was there, and there also he judged Israel, and he built there an altar to the Lord. There's Ramah in the center of that circuit. We notice his home. Next week, in our next lesson, Lord willing, we'll study 1 Samuel chapter 8 through chapter 10. A long study today, a lot of good information here. Need to go back over this, go back over it once again. So with that, till next lesson, Bob's your uncle. If you found this video helpful and wish to learn more, be sure you download the note card that goes with this lesson and our free 4-lesson Bible correspondence course. You will find the links in the description below. We here at the Spring Hill Church of Christ, meeting at 405 Butler Street in Spring Hill, Louisiana, want to help you with your growth in your knowledge of God's Word. Remember, we are in it for the likes and the subs, so be sure to like us, subscribe to our channel, and tell others. Thanks for watching. In the meantime, in between time, we will see you next time. Cheerio, mate. And with that, Bob's your uncle.